Sun filtered through the full-grown oak trees that were planted in rows on either side of the entrance of the cemetery. Multiple cars of varying colors and sizes slowly eased along the warm sunlit road in a line as they were on their way to parking, to which a man in a dark uniform was directing as he was posted in the middle of the road, waving at the passing organized cars in the general direction of where they were supposed to go. I stood along with some of my family as we had already chosen our parking long before, during the early morning hours, and were now awaiting entry to the cemetery with several other families and individuals. It was a beautiful clear day, not too hot, but cool enough to be outside without the concerns of dehydration or any other sun-inflicted ailments befalling all of us. But if there ever were a situation of that nature to appear, then there were booths within the cemetery that were providing refreshments if needed, with the additional mist fans situated every several paces within the grounds for people as well. And, along with those benefits, were other booths containing food, merchandise, and many other carnivalesque games to keep most of the people entertained as they watched over the grave sites. Tuning out the bustle and conversation of the surrounding people, I closed my eyes and basked in the warmth of the sun, beginning to feel the start of blissful drowsiness as it seeped into my bones. And then, a cool breeze fluttered through my hair, and a small, knowing smile upturned my lips. "What are you smiling about?" My sister's voice cut through my momentary sunbasking, and I turned my dark eyes up at her. "It's so awesome here!" I answered, a smile across my face in excitement. She smiled back at me. "Yeah, they really done this place up a lot. Look at all these banners and decorations. Oh, and there's some lights. I wonder what color they'll light up later." "Guys, do you smell that food? It smells so good." Our brother inserted into the conversation, a dismayed grimace on his face. "I know, but we stopped by the burger place to get you food. Mom doesn't want to take any chances for you to have a reaction. Sorry, dude." We both stared at our brother with sympathy on our faces, and he dropped his own head in dejection. The smell of food that was cooking danced in the air, a temptation for all the people who were currently gathered. "What I don't get," our sister began pointedly, attitude shifting to being serious, "is why people were even stupid enough to desecrate graves in the first place. They're probably cursed for life right now, not to mention haunted. With all that they've done, I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up cursing the generations of their family before them," I added in agreement, and my siblings hummed along with me as well. "It's just stupid. People died and should be resting in peace. I don't get them." Our brother sighed too, and our father appeared by our side with several strands of paper wristbands in his grasp. "Here's our ticket inside. He should be waiting inside for us by the horse monument." Our father handed out a wristband to each of us, and also to our mother that joined us from standing under the shade of a nearby oak tree. "Do we have a map of the cemetery, or do we already know where we're going?" our mother asked, furrowing her eyebrows at the displeasing thought of wandering lost for any long while in this strange place, and especially in the sun. "We don't have a map, but he's going to meet us at a halfway point where there is a row of columbaria," our father curtly responded to our mother, and I awkwardly fidgeted with the wristband my sister helped me put on. Soon enough, we all walked through the open black-style gates, and were introduced to a whole crowd of people, either mingling around booths or making their way towards their determined destination in the cemetery. I settled on bringing up the rear of my family's group, as I didn't want to have the hassle of being dogged on for being in the way of our path for any of them. And my father took the lead and basically just sped off in a quick pace, leaving most all of us to try and catch up, to keep up. I had no trouble doing so, and just looked around at all intrigue of the buzzing people and colorful decorations. Delicious smoke sizzled off the many grills containing the cooking meat or vegetables of meals to be purchased by people. Colorful webs of cotton candy were weaved and clumped together for the little eager hands of children who desired to devour the treats provided. The attitude was certainly a far cry from the realistic reason everyone was gathered there: the grave desecrations. Apart from that depressing atrocity, I found it a welcome change into an atmosphere so upbeat and bright. Can't let the bastards believe it's affected us so deeply to the point of sinking to their level, right? At least, I think so. After some wandering, we found our father's friend without too much trouble. and he had told us that his own family was soon to come later, but were dealing with some errands at that point in time. So my siblings and I ended up getting some tickets to go around and do whatever we wanted at the many booths and respectfully visit several graves of some relative main historical interest. I ended up at some fun arts and crafts booth that was next to a booth holding different types of jewelry and other accessories. I spent my time making a star-spangled banner collar that was the size of the hair tie currently circling my left wrist. This was a collar meant for my stuffed animal, whose backstory was deeply immersed in the war front, a majority of the graves getting destroyed being those of valiantly devoted veterans who served their duty, and was something to commemorate our time at the cemetery gathering. Oh yeah, when I say our time. I pulled my arm into my sleeve when I was finished with my noble craft, and closed my hand around a small, smooth-textured bundle that was definitely full of beads. I unearthed the stowaway to show a small stuffed animal with the majority of the fur being a solid black, and the other portion being a tan brown, the stitch patterns showing it to appear as a Doberman Pinscher dog. But, in my story, he was more so a mix of Doberman and German Shepherd, due to his coat having slightly longer fur than the Doberman's usually solid and slim outline. Dark brown beady eyes glinted up at me in the sunlight, and a stitched stoic-looking frown was the only thing that met me as I did so. I suspected the reason for his expression, despite it being his permanent feature, as I was more adept at reading his changes in attitude than most people wouldn't be able to decipher if they tried. Which they never did, and I was left to be the only interpreter. This is why I didn't really have friends. Don't look at me like that, especially when I went through the trouble of smuggling you into this place. And after I made a sash for you. Talk about ungrateful. I openly talked to my toy, whose name was decidedly Trooper from off of his brand tag I cut off long ago, when I was made aware of the booth owner and any other booth stragglers not paying attention to my strange and off antics. Though there really was no need to worry, as I definitely could be passed off as a child with how young of an appearance I naturally had. So if anyone saw me talking to my toy, they'd naturally assume I were a young child. But the reason I kept it on the down low anyway was because my parents and siblings didn't know I took my stuffed animal to the cemetery gathering with me, and would most likely give me hell for it later. Or right when there wasn't any people around. "Emery, what are you doing?" My sister's voice suddenly chimed behind me, and I jumped from her unexpected appearance in a suspicious way, before I turned my head to look at her while keeping my body stiffly hiding Trooper in a hoodie hug. "Arts and crafts!" I answered in a really too loud tone of voice. If my body wasn't the one screaming that I was hiding something I wasn't supposed to have, then my voice audibly would give it away. Shit. As soon as I saw my sister's already narrowed eyes squint at me with even more suspicion, I knew it was too late to go back on it. So, in a comical sort of fashion, I eased Trooper up and had him peer over my shoulder and up at her with his already solemn and defensive expression on his little face. Immediately, at the sight of him, my sister's eyes widened. The green and brown flecked irises glimmered with shock as she stared gap-mouthed at me, and I felt a pit open up within my stomach as I dreaded the lecture that was coming. "Emery, what were you thinking? Are you insane? Why'd you bring him here?" "Because I wanted to. He was a soldier, so I wanted him to come to celebrate the protection of the gravestones of other soldiers who fought in the war. He doesn't like the grave desecrations either," I defended with an equal appearance of anger to rival my sister's, a response I had always carried from a younger age whenever I got in trouble for something. I guess I'd subconsciously developed a defense mechanism to act tough and bluff my way out of situations. Though, where I learned to do that, I'll never know. Neither of my parents do themselves. "Not only will you end up losing him if you're not careful, you're probably going to get him haunted." My eyes flashed at her, glaring at her for even bringing the prospect up in the first place. My face also began to heat up because I knew for a fact she was right about if I lost him. She always was anyway. "No! I never lose him! I love him too much. And he won't get haunted either because, 1, I didn't do anything to give reason to, and 2, he's strong enough to hold his own against any negative energy. That's enough, just put him away." My sister dismissed my argument when she noticed people in passing looking over in interest at my heated response, and didn't want me to embarrass ourselves further. Hot indignation flared within me like a struck match, but I grit my teeth to keep from snapping at her again. Had I still been in middle school, I would have pushed further against her out of spite, but I was well beyond the brash teenager age and was now a grown adult. A lot of growth on my part to let it go, especially when I was in the wrong, but it's not like she really noticed this. With a deep huff of cool air, I tucked Trooper away into my hoodie again and affirmed to myself to release my anger before I misplaced it. When I turned back to retrieve my crafted sash, I realized the owner of the booth had also stopped to watch our dispute, and I managed to give her a smile of assurance and apology. She gave one back before she turned away to deal with some responsibilities, and I took that moment to take my leave. I admit I was being petty when I walked off without my sister, still a thing I had to work on, but baby steps. I ignored her when she easily appeared at my side and just worked on inhaling more of the cool, misty air, imagining myself releasing all my anger that was hot as fire with each exhale, and it being whisked away by the very same serene and mellow wind. It really lightened up from my time on the balcony last night. Probably because my attitude needed to come down. "Dad's friend's family's here," my sister began, after the lingering tense moment between us prolonged to an uncomfortable degree, and I took that as an extended olive branch. Not missing a beat, I responded nonchalantly. "Try saying that 5 times fast." Not even a millisecond passed before I felt something skid off my shoulder, and my sister spoke with a restrained laugh. She did her usual slap to my arm in a jokingly scolding manner, though I plainly heard a smile on her face. "Shut up, dude!" "Dad's friend's family's here. Dad's friend. I burst out into laughter, and she followed suit, but not before giving another quick swipe at my shoulder to stop me in good nature. We quickly got back on track to talking and joking around with each other, our dispute long behind us as we approached the rest of her family. But a seed of dread appeared in my stomach as I noticed the new faces to our entourage. I went quiet, but my sister didn't notice as we just arrived into the conversation. Me and my sister said our hellos and hugged who we needed to, but despite this, I ended up sinking into the background as everyone found someone to converse with. A long, familiar feeling began to bubble up within me, but I was quick to quash it. No, I was past the point of being a severe introvert. I continued to mentally assure myself, but the longer I ended up being unintentionally forgotten, I was brought back to certain moments of my past that I would have rather left in the shadow realm. There was a couple of times I was brought into the conversation and capable of inputting my own opinions, but other than that, I was just a silent shadow. That sucked, man. Don't concern yourself over this. It just makes it easier for me to talk to you. Instinctively, my hand rested onto the small bundle inside my hoodie, and the world around me tuned out into just a blur of movements and flitting colors. The voice of my stuffed animal struck up conversation in my mind, and I mentally jumped at the chance of conversing to distract myself from the current whirlwind of emotions. Yet, I knew well that my outer appearance would show me, in fact, composed and cool. It's not healthy to suppress your emotions. You have to face it. Tell them how you feel. No way! That'll undo all the inner work I did for myself throughout high school. I'm not weak. I can handle being alone. I'm used to it by now. You shouldn't be. You know this. And if you believe being alone makes you strong, which I'm sure you really don't, then you really haven't been doing the inner work. I frowned, wondering why on earth I would ever think to make Trooper this dead set on being unpleasant to talk to. Because you need me to be. Okay, I'm just gonna get out of my head for a while, I murmured aloud to myself as I shook my head back into the present. Akin to my sister, he had some pretty good advice to give. But if that was true, then why was it that I ended up making some poor decisions when I could have followed my already present inner sister? Because I wasn't really with her smarts. Fun mental gymnastics. I should be a gold medalist by now. Ah! I instantly looked up at the loud noise, and found the source of it to come from a large, imposing black crow. It was perched on one of the poles holding up a canopy to some kind of darkly colored booth. It was empty, and looking devoid of any life that could have manned it. I couldn't tell exactly what this booth was initially correlated to, if it was supposed to be for entertainment purposes or the selling of merchandise, but it looked like it had gone through the ages of use, from the way it was sun-bleached to lighter color. It might have been dark black at some point, but with the tinge of purple it now had, it could have been misleading. I refocused back on the bird in particular, wondering why it was even in a heavily populated section of the cemetery. I knew there was food around, but surely it wasn't worth it with the people loitering around. It ruffled its feathers when it noticed I was looking at it closely, cocking its head every which way, characteristic of a true bird. I looked away, though, reminding myself the dangers of a crow if it were to feel threatened, and moved to carry on my way and not spare it another glance. Caw! Caw! I whirled around and peered at it again, realizing it was calling for possibly a different reason. I cocked my own head in turn, wondering if it was really worth it to find out. You're persistent on gaining my attention. What do you want? I squinted my eyes up at it, remembering what I correlated a crow to in meaning. Its head swiveled to the side and eyed me with a foreboding look of its own. Then, its beak unhinged and released another guttural cry, as if in reply to my inquiry. But it was entirely useless, as I couldn't understand what it meant. Well, I had an inkling to its meaning, but I refused to pay any mind to the fleeting thought. Look, it's bad enough I even stopped to talk to you, but I don't even understand. Goodbye. I was unusually firm in my delivery, perhaps even hostile to an unnecessary degree. However, I knew well of how my strangeness would be received by onlookers, so I wanted to move on and be as discreet as possible. I heard no other call for a moment, but a flash of panic shot through me when I heard a spastic flutter of wings come closer and closer, and instantly turned around to scare off any attempted attack from the animal, but saw the crow flash straight past me in a blur of glossy black feathers. It let out a flurry of caws as it flew off, and finally disappeared over a collection of oak trees and into the beyond. I took a shaky breath, feeling my heart beat at a quick pace as though I had just avoided a speeding car, but I shook it off and attempted to continue on with my family. However, I didn't see hide or hair of them. Oh, crap! But fortunately, before I could submerge myself into a pool of absolute panic and hysterics, I nearly fainted in relief as I heard a familiar warm voice behind me. Still making friends with the animals, Emery? Honestly, from the most I have seen happen with you, I shouldn't be so surprised. I turned to see my mother appearing from the crowd, and I nearly pouted at her, but the wife of my father's friend was with her as well. I shook it off and pouted anyway. Friends? The bird seriously just tried to mow me over. I don't know. You seem pretty talkative with it, my mother's friend commented, a teasing smile on her face. My mother turned to her with a wide smile. Right? So many things just happened with my daughter. I'm convinced she's a medium. I'm not a medium, I firmly protested with a rush, not wanting anyone to get the wrong idea and think me capable of reading the future or seeing messages in inanimate objects. Or was it the other way around? I don't have special powers. Well, in any case, she and animals have always had a certain connection, and she basically blew off my words. Cool. I silently walked behind the two grown women, following them to where the rest of the group really was. I was then left gobsmacked and awed at the sight of a large bronze statue of a soldier on horseback, and wielding a sword drawn and pointed up into the bright afternoon sky. It was the horse monument. We reunited with the group and began to take family pictures, each of us posing in several various uniform ways as we had our pictures taken, and then afterwards we followed other people's examples and joined in decorating up the mini columbaria. Several more hours passed painfully by of me being in the background and feeling out of place and flitting up into the whimsy of my mind to keep myself occupied. Of course, that was with Trooper being a lingering presence. Soon enough, the sun went from being in the sky to beginning to sink low behind many of the surrounding oak trees of the cemetery. The lights my sister pointed out earlier that day had just turned on too, beautiful fairy lights glowing a bright, warm yellow upon everything in the surrounding area it could reach. Most of my family and friends enjoying themselves all the while with many other people too. In fact, my siblings had made some new acquaintances with our friends' own children, and they were hitting it off incredibly well. And then the feeling returned again. Loneliness returned with a vengeance, digging into my heart and gut like serrated daggers as I watched from the back. I reached for Trooper again and gulped. I couldn't take it anymore. I approached my mother and told her I was going to the bathroom. She was going to say something to me, likely wanting me to tell my sister to come with me so I wouldn't be alone. Indignation flared again, but I quashed it just as fast. But she got distracted by her friends talking and got her swept up into an array of topics of their own interest. I took that as my chance to slip away and walk past tables and other people grouped up together and laughing. Laughing, conversing, even dancing, while I slipped by as though I were a phantom. I didn't have to use the bathroom, though. I just wanted an excuse to just leave that situation. I was feeling all kinds of uncomfortable. I just also felt my hair stand on end as I felt as though a lot of different eyes were on me, judging me, probably pitying me. Seeing how awkward and lost I was, I grit my teeth, clenching my eyes shut. No, I said I was done with this. I could almost sense Trooper there now, knowing what he was going to say to me about my thought process. I knew I had problems. I knew I ran from them. But I truly just wanted some time to myself, especially now. I paused in place and just stood still. No soul was around me at all. No voices, no stress, no anxiety of fitting in, or rather, standing out. It was just me and my present thoughts. But this time was different. The energy changed. It wasn't anyone's fault I didn't fit in. Not my family's, not the people themselves, not even me. I just preferred my own special company. My family tried, and I loved them for it. They made me who I ended up being in the end anyway. But I needed more time to sort myself out. And maybe it was wrong, but I always preferred to do it alone. Sorry. I knew I had to head back before they realized I was gone for too long, but just the thought of it made me droop a bit. I didn't realize how tired I felt at that moment until now, and a new wave of headache-inducing thoughts began to accumulate slowly. I was then surprised when a sudden weight plopped within my hoodie, as though it was dropped, and the hem of my hoodie prevented it from impacting the ground, so it was left to rest against my lower abdomen. I was then reminded of what I had momentarily forgotten, and reached down to the hem of my hoodie and produced Trooper into the open. I did bring him along to make this trip even more meaningful after all. Sorry, Trooper, I forgot you wanted to see the graveyard too. I sheepishly smiled, and my arms brought the soft bundle to the collar of my hoodie to give him more of a good vantage point of what I was seeing. Before I had set him there, however, I didn't miss the expression reminiscent of alertness in his perked fluffy ears and morose distrust of anything and everything in his eyes. Trooper, you can calm down. There's no danger here, you know. I smiled warmly down at him, amused by his attitude. Indeed, there was nobody around me at that point. I had reached the end of the walkway where the fairy lights strewn in the rafters above me reached their limit, and the only thing left was a large expanse of grass field submerged within potent darkness. I continued to stare ahead, wanting, for whatever unexplained reason, to go out there and explore what was beyond the reach of these delightful fairy lights. What secret thing that needed to be found that was shrouded in a veil of shadows and darkness? Whatever it was, it made me try my hand at descriptive poetry, so it had to have been fantastic. Trooper, should I or shouldn't I? I spoke in a low whisper, head lowered to where my chin was resting on his little head, no doubt looking meek and nervous myself. Who knew what kind of trouble I'd end up finding myself in out there? And my parents would get worried if they noticed me gone. My hair was suddenly tousled by the wind picking up, hitting my face as I closed my eyes against being blinded and hurt, and angled my face against the sudden wind. My tresses then fluttering on either side of my head and exposing my face to the chilly cold. Conveniently, I found myself looking up past the last strands of fairy light strung above me to my right, or rather what was beyond it. A lone tree's leaves shimmered and rustled loudly from the blowing wind, and stray leaves detached from some of the sinewy branches and fluttered off towards the ground in the dark portion of the grassland. That seemed like it was reason enough for me to make my move. After one step, then another, I had begun walking off beyond the boundary of light and, soon enough, was traipsing through the dark fields to an unknown destination. After all, what was the harm in a little exploration?